Riddle me this. If a pregnant lady broke into your house and she delivered her child in your living room, would you say that that baby is now a member of your family? Would that baby take your last name? Would that baby have a right to your family fortune? Would you put that baby in the will, consider it a lifelong member of your family? No, probably not. For one, you'd be asking, what the heck just happened? Why did a woman break into my house and deliver a baby in my living room? If you would say no, that hypothetical child is not a member of your family, does not deserve to be written into your will, then why on God's green earth do we say that people who come here from Lord knows where and they deliver a baby, they break into our country and they deliver a baby on American soil, why would we ever, in a million years, purely from a common sense perspective, why would we ever say, you know what, by golly, I've got a good idea. Let's make that kid an American citizen. Now, today we're going to be talking about all of the problems with birthright citizenship, focusing more so on what ought to be rather than what is. I did a podcast on this a while back talking about the challenge to birthright citizenship. I believe actually it was like in the first week of the Trump administration number 2, when he first signed the executive order, which has now made its way all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. This conversation is back in the front lines of the American conversation. That podcast I did, almost a year ago, or maybe more than that now, was really an argument as to why this case is not so clear-cut. Some people would say before the United States Supreme Court, they would read the 14th Amendment and they would say, well, if you're born in the United States, you're an American citizen. There's no chance. Trump has no chance. The legal theory, I tried to flesh it out back then. I'm not an attorney, but I do read the Constitution. Anybody can read the Constitution, get a pretty good understanding of it. It wasn't a document. Got to go down this rabbit trail. The Constitution is not a document made only to be understood by lawyers and judges. You, as an average American citizen, assuming that you are literate, if you can read and you have basic comprehension skills, you can understand the Constitution. We know that it was not just made for lawyers or judges or politicians or anyone else. If it was made just for those people, that would be silly. It was made for the average American. Look at the Federalist Papers. Look at the Anti-Federalist Papers. At the time of the ratification, there was a heated debate, not just among the attorneys, but among every American citizen who cared about the future of the nation. They were all invested in this. They were all researching it deeply. They wanted to understand the foundational document. If somebody else has to come in between you and the Constitution, be the arbiter of what it means, if they have to be the high priest of the Constitution and explain it to you, because you're just a layperson, you couldn't possibly understand black and white English, right? If that's the case, then the Constitution doesn't actually exist. If the Constitution is nothing more than whatever the lawyers tell you it is, or whatever the judges tell you that it is, it doesn't even exist. It's a figment of your imagination. In order for it to be real and binding, it has to be something that every single American can and should understand. That's my I had to go down that rabbit trail. But we talked about, the constitutional argument. I laid it out more than a year ago now. But if you really want to hear the best case made for it, go listen to, Trump's administration arguing before the United States Supreme Court. I made the prediction a while ago that we would probably see that and that it would be an interesting conversation. But the subject to the jurisdiction therein seems to be the catching phrase here. The founders, without rehashing the entirety of the legal side of things, the founders and pretty much everybody who's ever written an amendment since then, they don't really typically put things in amendments for no reason. Right? They don't just waste ink. They don't look at it and go, I'll just put a little of this, a little bit of that, and we'll call it a day. Typically, if there's something written into the Constitution, its amendments, etc., that's there for a good reason. So, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, it's a whole debate. I'm not going to go back into the entire thing. We already rehashed that. So, we've already discussed it. We've talked about it ad nauseum. What I'm going to talk about today is what are the problems conceptually, logically speaking, taking it away from the law, because that debate is being had by people who make a lot more money than me. Let's talk not so much about the law, but more about what ought to be, not what is. That's a conversation for the Supreme Court, and they'll make that decision. And right now, it's not looking so hot. I think it all comes down to ACB. Based on the bits that I heard from some of her questions, I wouldn't hold my breath about ACB coming in and saving us, though it is possible. She has been on the right side of decisions in the past. She's also been on the wrong side. So we'll see. We'll see. Be praying over what happens. But what ought to be, not so much what is, but what ought to be. Like we go back to the example of if somebody just broke into your house, they deliver a baby on your front lawn, or I guess, it's somewhere on your property. It's just got to be on your property. Does that mean, like, if somebody does that to me, they break into my house, are they now in the Nieves household? Do I have to feed them? Like, do I have to take care of them? Because there's certain things that members of my household do get. There's privileges, their rights. I would die for anybody in my household. I'm the head of my household. So if somebody comes in and they want to do harm to my wife, if they want to do harm to my family, I'm going to kill them. That is my job as the head of the household that I live in. I'm the protector of this house. If somebody breaks in and they want to kill somebody in here, I'm going to kill them. That's just the way that this plays out. Or I suppose they could kill me. It depends who's faster. I probably have them beat, though, But if somebody is to come into my home and they're a member of my family, for example, if my wife and I were to adopt a child, that same protection that I give to my wife would now extend to an adopted child because they have been welcomed in. They have been given my last name. They are a Nieves now. I would protect them in the exact same way. I would care for them, I would feed them, I would do all of the same things because they would be a Nieves. They would be a member of my household. And when the time came for my stuff to be divvied up, they would have a right of my inheritance. They would get what I leave, in my will to my children and whomever survives me. That is what we're doing right now with anybody on planet Earth who can just come here and deliver a child on American soil. That child is considered an American, just like the kid. You're now in the family. You're now a Nieves, right? You're now an American. You get this title, and you get with it all of the benefits. You get with it all of the things that come with being an American. And America, despite our flaws, despite governmental corruption, despite whatever the pedophile Epstein class is doing at this certain time, or the military-industrial complex, whatever nonsense is happening in our country, we are still the greatest nation that the world has ever seen. You cannot find a comparable empire, a success, economic, military, you name it. You cannot find a rival to the United States, a real rival to the United States since ancient Rome. We are the greatest place on planet Earth. It follows, logically, that everybody on planet Earth would want to come here. They would want to be an American. They would want to enjoy those protections. Do you think, like, homeless people, if they found out that if they came and they were in Nieves, if they found out that I would feed them, clothe them, I would die for them, if somebody broke into this house, I would lay my life down to protect them? If a homeless person found out that they could get all of those benefits just by breaking into my country or into my house, don't you think they would? Don't you think that they would say, hey, that's a really good gig over there. There's this incredible incentive structure that's been laid out before me. I think I'm going to go get a piece of that. Now, in my house, if a homeless person tries breaking in, you can probably deduce what's going to happen. And I will defend my home. I won't allow invaders to come into my home. I apply that same standard. Oftentimes when we discuss issues of immigration, it's very productive. It's very helpful. You might be able to find some sort of a reason that it's not perfectly analogous, but it's very helpful to view immigration like you would your home, like you would anybody coming in. We've talked about this before. You have a house. You probably have locks on your door. Maybe you have an apartment, whatever. You have a domicile, and you probably pay pretty close attention to who comes in and who goes out. You pay attention to who is welcome and who is unwelcome, and you treat people accordingly. If somebody wants to come because they're your guest, you might roll out the red carpet, give them some Southern hospitality, a little sweet tea, you get out the nice pillows, you put them on the guest bed, that kind of thing. But if somebody wants to just break in, they want to kick down your door, they're not going to get sweet tea. They're probably going to get a 12-gauge slug to the chest. That works. Might not be the best for over-penetration, but don't worry about that right now. Anyways, you're going to repel foreign invaders. All of those same principles that apply to guarding, defending, protecting your home, your wife, your children, your people, those all apply, at least in concept, they all apply when you're looking at your nation's immigration. Obviously, it is a little bit different. We can look at ordered loves, and we can say, yeah, my neighbor, I love my neighbor, but it's not quite the same as my child or something like that. Yes, of course. But the analogy stands very strong. You have to think about the fact that we are the greatest country on the face of the earth. And we're one of the only countries, by the way, dumb enough to say that anybody who comes here and delivers a child on our soil, that child is now a citizen. I mean, very few other countries do this. There are some that do it, yes. Very, very few. It's an absolute mess. Every piece of this puzzle is an absolute mess. And you don't have to, like, stepping away from the Republican-Democrat divide, stepping away from the politics of it, you have to be, if you're even remotely intellectually honest, you have to be willing to say, okay, yeah, that's an incentive structure. That at the bare minimum, we are begging for people to come and abuse this system. If we're going to say that anybody who comes here, this is not the 1800s anymore. Everyone in the world is one plane ticket away from their child being an American. Don't you think that they would be willing to do that? Wouldn't you be willing to do that if it meant that your child would have a much better future? What are some of the other issues as we're sitting here looking at birthright citizenship, all of the problems with it? Okay, how about chain migration? We talked about the incentive structure. That's bad enough. That's all. We could leave it there. We could just wrap up. I could finish today's podcast. I could wrap it all up and say, there, that's all you need to know. It's the incentive structure. People, everyone in the world, one flight away. That's really, really bad. Absolutely. Chain migration. For one, we're getting into slightly another bag of worms here because this ought not be, okay? It ought not be that you can just be chain migrating your entire family. But when somebody is a citizen, they get to sponsor immigrants. They get to sponsor their family to come here. So if you're a parent, this is kind of compounding the issue, I suppose, with the incentive structure. But chain migration is directly enabled because if you're a parent and you want citizenship, you skedaddle a couple of feet on across the border, you deliver your baby on American soil, and now all of a sudden you have a really effective pathway. Your baby, this is why they call them anchor babies, because your baby becomes an anchor so that you can now stay in the United States. You can eventually get your legal citizenship status, and it creates a chain. You ever play as a kid? You ever play with those? I think it was like red monkeys in a jar. I played with them in like preschool. It's this little jar, a barrel of monkeys, you know, and their arms are opposite or whatever. One goes up, one goes down, and you can link the monkeys, and you can hang them. You make these big giant chains. That's what happens. Not to be somebody's gonna go, are you being a racist or something? No. It's the chain of the. That's the way that it works. They link one to the next, and you let in one anchor baby. And then you fast forward 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's like the monkeys in a barrel. You got one link to the next, and it goes on and on and on. How do we then stop that? How can a nation, think of this, with this chain migration structure, anybody who's born here, right? How can a nation possibly maintain its identity? How can we as America ever hope to still be America if that's what we're allowing to have happen to our country? And, you know, people in the mainstream media, they decry this conversation. They say, you're not allowed to talk about that. You're peddling, what do they refer to it as these days? Great replacement theory. You're peddling the great replacement theory, and that is strictly prohibited. You know what I've not heard any of them on the mainstream media do, though, is I've not heard them explain why we're wrong. When somebody mentions that the American people are going to be replaced, that we have a structure called birthright citizenship that is enabling our people to be replaced by foreign peoples. One flight, one-way ticket on an airplane. Now we have an anchor baby, and we have a barrel of monkeys, and we have this whole chain migration system. If we allow this to continue, if we don't change this system, how are we going to have a country long term? You look at the demographics of this nation, you look at the politics, you look at the religion of this nation. You want to have, let's say, an additional 30 million people that are, air quotes, because this would be legal, right? If this process, if birthright citizenship, we're talking about all the problems with it, if it is to be legal, remain legal, it would be 10, 20, 30 million. Do you want that? Do you want 10 or 20 or 30 million people from third world Islamic radical, what are they, Shia Muslims? Do you want 20 or 30 million Muslims to come to this country? We're seeing certain places like Plano, Texas right now. Plano, Texas is being overrun by Islamic communities. They're building giant mosques. It's the United States of America, and we're having to listen to the Muslim call to prayer being blared through the streets. We look at what happened in Great Britain. It's not a question. This isn't some hypothetical of, oh, could you imagine something like that happening these days? No, it's something like that already has happened. We have the benefit. I mean, if we were to get this wrong, listen, if we look at Great Britain and really much of Europe, and we make the same mistakes here as they made there, we will have failed an open book test. We have all of the answers laid out in front of us. We have everything we could ever need to make an educated decision about what ought to be. And we say, no, that's okay. That's okay. Chain migration is that's the coolest thing ever. And by the way, let me just throw in a bit of a disclaimer, maybe an olive branch of sorts. If someone is listening to this, and they're an anchor baby, if somebody is listening to this and they're the parent who used their anchor baby and then has pursued chain migration, I'll say something that maybe people on the right aren't often willing to say, and maybe that's for good reason that they don't talk about it. I don't know. Maybe it's a mistake for me to say this, but I understand why you would do that. In fact, I don't harbor any hate in my heart for people who have abused the law, because I understand it. And what they did, though I very much so wish they wouldn't have done it, it was not illegal. So I don't even know if I can say abused the law. We were just dumb enough to allow this to happen. Our leadership, we were run by stupid people who created a system that was suicidal. But if I was in Nicaragua and I had a family to feed, and I look at the economic opportunities in front of me and I think, oh my gosh, I mean, this is just not it. I can give my child a better future if I just cross the border and my wife delivers a baby in the United States. This could change everything for us. And this is where I don't want to seem like we're heartless or something. Maybe people on the right should talk about this more. I'm not quite sure. I can really understand. Maybe not understand. Maybe that's not the correct word because I've never been there. But I can rationalize, and I can get it. I think understand is a perfectly good word. I can understand why somebody would want to do that, because if I think about it and I put myself in their shoes, who's to say I wouldn't have done the exact same thing? The United States, as we said, is the greatest nation in the history of the world. So if there is an open door invitation to go and be in the land of opportunity, I would do it. And I think you probably would as well. So when we advocate against this, when we talk about what ought to be, it ought to be that in order to be an American citizen, you have to be born of American parents. You can't be an illegal alien. You can't have broken in and then just claim that you're a part of the family. But as we talk about it, I do get why there are some people who this is really hard for them, right? You hear it, and oftentimes it is women that are more empathetic. That's the way that God made them. And they hear these stories and they see the images of crying children and they think about, oh, well, I was so blessed. And I talk about this often, by the way, on the show. It was a tremendous blessing. Do not ever forget the blessing. You didn't earn it. You didn't deserve it. But you were probably, if you're listening to this, you were probably born in the United States. If your happy butt just so happened to come out on American soil and you were born to American parents, you got no idea how lucky you are. And it's really not luck. I would consider it blessed. You were blessed, unbelievably blessed to be born in the United States of America. You could have been born in Pakistan, in Azerbaijan, I don't know, some country I can't even name. You could have been born literally anywhere else in the world would have been immeasurably worse than to be born in the United States. And so when we come to it with that heart, it's very easy to understand why this would happen. That doesn't mean we have suicidal empathy. That doesn't mean we say, because again, let's go back to the household analogy we talked about before. Your household, you have enjoyed blessings. You probably have food in the pantry right now. You probably have running water at like 5 different locations in your house. There are people all across the world who do not have that, who pray to God every day for the opportunity to live a life of luxury that you enjoy right now. Are you going to look at those kids and say, you know what, everybody from the entire world, come on into my house? You're not going to do that because you would be suicidal. Your household would collapse. You couldn't feed anybody at that point. So you do have to have something of ordered loves. It doesn't mean that we hate these people, but we protect our country from insanity. Well, we've hit on many of the issues, if not all of the issues, with birthright citizenship. The question, I suppose, now goes to, what do we do? What are we supposed to do about it? Because President Trump, he has the executive order, like we said. This has now gone before the United States Supreme Court. We're going to see what their decision is. It'll be a while until they let us lay people know what is constitutional and what is not. I have such beef with the Supreme Court. We talked about this years ago, and many times in the years, I suppose, following. But Marbury, Madison, there's so much that our nation's history goes so much deeper than what you were taught in elementary school. But Article 6, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, not the judges, not the unelected, robed tyrants. They are not the supreme law of the land. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution itself. Now, we have to have courts. I don't like it. I like the Supreme Court when they do what I want. I don't like the Supreme Court when they don't do what I want. And unfortunately, by the way, everybody else believes that. They're just not honest enough to tell you. Anyway, unfortunately, it's looking like we're not going to get this passed. This is my hunch, and I hope that I am incorrect. ACB has surprised us before, so it's completely possible, 100% is completely possible, that we do see the Supreme Court shut down birthright citizenship. But I would say the odds are not in our favor at this point in time, which is, it's upsetting. It's unfortunate. But what do we do about that? There's going to be a lot of people who are really mad. Trust me, if it comes down the way that I think it's going to come down, and many other people are predicting it, it's not just me, it looks like the court is not, Roberts is not on our side. All of the liberal justices are not on our side. And then it comes down to ACB. That's kind of where it looks to be shaken up, and we'll see. People are going to be really mad, though, when this decision comes out. And regardless, people are going to be really mad. The left is going to be really mad. And you have to wonder, we'll get to this in a minute. I'll make a mental footnote. We'll come back to it. You have to wonder, why is the left so upset? What is it about this that the left loves so much? Because it's very telling. You can tell a lot about a man by who his enemies are. You can tell a lot about somebody by what makes them mad. Right? The things that make me mad are like the mutilation and killing of children, pointless foreign wars, senseless debt and spending that's irrational, that's digging us into a hole that my children and grandchildren might maybe be able to dig us out of, probably not. There's the things that make me mad, blaspheming God. I mean, that makes me pretty mad when I see these sorts of things. The things that make the left mad, it's like, you disagree with me about being able to butcher a child. You don't want to have infinity foreigners imported into your country. Like, why are these their priorities? What's wrong with you people? Anyways, it's time for another day. But what do we do when this decision comes down? Listen, this is not gonna be a popular opinion because people just want to chimp out and go crazy about stuff. The truth of it is, we have a constitution. And I can already tell you right now, I know for a fact, there will be those who will say, for example, that's a lovely decision, now enforce it. And there are times when that is appropriate. I've said here on this show that President Trump should start telling these rogue, district judges and stuff like that, no, that's a lovely opinion, now enforce it. There's historical context to that. We won't get into it. Interesting study, by the way. But the Supreme Court has neither the power of the sword nor the pen. They can't really do much of anything, or the purse, I suppose it is. They can't really do or enforce anything. The old joke is, well, that's a good, you can tell me what I'm allowed to do, but what are you going to do about it? There is a time and a place for that philosophy. There's a time and a place for ignoring the court. And that's not a popular opinion. It's one that has to be stated with great prudence. You can't be an idiot about this. You can't just say, nah, they disagree with me, so everything is... You have to be very selective about that position if you're going to say that the court is just, you're going to ignore them, because that can descend into anarchy, I suppose, very quickly. This is an unpopular opinion, but if the court rules, I would say, incorrectly on this, I do believe, I agree with the administration's constitutional argument. I do believe subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a compelling case. I think that that's important language. I don't think that they wrote that for no reason. The framers of the 14th Amendment were very clear that this wasn't meant for illegal aliens. The historical context, if you're looking at an original perspective, the historical context is that the 14th Amendment was written for the children of slaves. That's why it was to, anybody born in the United States was, well, because their parents were slaves and they were born here and they were granted citizenship. It wasn't meant for this other stuff. But if the court gets it wrong, based on the law, based on the Constitution, based on originalist interpretation of the Constitution, it would be a bad call. It would not be the worst call in all of human history. This is a tight one. This is not the most clear-cut, straightforward case in either direction. Again, if you first hear this, like when I first heard that there was going to be a challenge to it, I thought, there's no way. How's that even possible? You do more research into it, it's like, okay, actually, that's a pretty good argument. That does make a lot of sense. That's the camp I'm in. I'm against birthright citizenship as the current law stands. But if we don't get this decision, which I think is more likely than not, what are we supposed to do about it? The Constitution was brilliantly written. Brilliantly written. Now, the unfortunate part is that the Constitution is really only adequate for a moral, a religious, an upright society that is engaged. We've often heard the quotes from the Founding Fathers, you have a republic if you can keep it. Yeah, well, that requires us to know our rights. It requires us to be involved, us to be familiar with what's going on, and for the population not to be, so profoundly stupid that we no longer deserve freedom. Because this is maybe we won't get into this today. This is a take many people are not ready for. There is a time and a place in a republic where the people no longer deserve to be a republic, okay? That a republic only works with an educated, moral, upright society. There is a time where they have to have somebody rule them. They've become too stupid to rule themselves. That does exist. I'm not saying that we're there right now, but it does exist. If America fails, the fault will always be on the people. I know you could blame, the corrupt politicians, they did things that they weren't supposed to do. Yeah, well, you voted for them. The people continued to vote for them. Now, if there's cases of fraud and things like that, I suppose there could be exceptions. But if we're looking, generally speaking, based on the way that our system of government works, when things go bad, it is the fault of us, the people, not as individuals, but collectively us, the people. We are to blame when we see our country go down a path that is not good. And so the current state of affairs, we can only blame ourselves. A republic functioning properly, the government is a mirror. It is a reflection of the people. It is a reflection of their level of involvement, their education. If you have a really bad member of Congress, somebody keeps voting for that dude. They can vote for themselves, but it's only one. They can't make themselves. All the money in the world will not overcome an educated and involved electorate. That's a fact. It's just a fact. If everybody in this country was actually paying attention and willing to do the work required to know what the heck is going on in their government and hold people accountable, we would have an amazing system of government. Our Constitution is literally the greatest political document ever written. It is darn near perfect. I don't know what you could change about it. Maybe the establishment clause. I don't know. But there's not much you could change about our Constitution to make this thing better. And I say that long-winded build-up rant to say, if the court gets this one wrong, we don't have to burn down Minneapolis, okay? We don't have to burn down Atlanta, Georgia. We have to pass a constitutional amendment. This is something that has been done many times in our nation's history. It's very difficult to do, but that is the correct course of action. When the left gets really mad, the left constantly, they want the justices on the United States Supreme Court, they want them to be activists. They want them to legislate from the bench. They want them to write into the Constitution that which is not there. That's their bread and butter. And I am not saying that that's what we are asking of the justices today. To be clear, I think there's a very strong originalist argument against birthright citizenship in the 14th Amendment. I do believe that. However, if we cannot get what we want based on the language that exists in the Constitution today, the thing to do is not to ignore the Constitution. I've seen some of these people, and they're getting a little worked up with this whole populist thing. And they're like, well, if the Constitution got us here, what good is the Constitution? Or I see people sharing around memes on Twitter. They say the Constitution is not a suicide pact. It's not a death cult. Actually, yes, it is. We live or die with the Constitution, my friend. This nation lives or dies with the Constitution, and there's a real possibility that quite literally you live or die with the Constitution. When that thing goes, it all goes. Now, yes, it is a piece of paper. It doesn't actually hold any, divine power. If we try and violate it, it's not like a video game where you're just literally not capable of breaking the rules. Like, you can't go there. There's an invisible wall. It's not like that, okay? The Constitution, we live or die with it, but we have to enforce it. We have to know. It's not a self-enforcing document. The people have to do that, and the people have to change it where necessary. Even the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, they were amendments. They weren't originally in that thing. We had to get them in. We had to add this to the Constitution because it was a great document, but it wasn't complete. There's new things that pop up. The left loves to say, well, the Constitution is a living and breathing document. Nah, not really. No, I very much disagree with the way that because they use that as justification to try and constantly be altering what it means. They'll read the Second Amendment and be like, yeah, but it's different than what that says. What that says has changed. It's living and breathing. That is a grotesquely incorrect understanding of how the Constitution is meant to work. But it is a living document in the sense that we can add to it. We can change it. We can put something in. We can take something out. We saw this with prohibition. Prohibition, we banned alcohol, the sale and consumption of alcohol in the United States, and then we changed our mind. This kind of a thing has happened. The Constitution is an amazingly written document. When we have an existential crisis, which birthright citizenship is literally an existential crisis. There's no question about it. If we don't change something about it, it will destroy our country. This will be the death of the Republic. I do believe that 100%. The answer is not to preemptively kill the Republic. If we say, just throw out the Constitution, we'll just make it up as we go. That is not. People are using this kind of stuff to say, well, if like I said, if the Constitution got us here, the Constitution is not a suicide pact. The Constitution is the greatest political document. Whatever you people replace it with, let me tell you, a little cold shot of water to the face. My friend, you are probably a smart individual. I'm a smart individual. You are not nearly smart enough to replace the Constitution with something better than the Constitution, nor am I. None of us are even remotely smart enough to hold a candle to the men who made the Constitution. That was like borderline divine inspiration. I'm not saying it was for sure, but listen, this is the greatest system we have ever seen. If it fails, it's an indictment not on the system, not on the document. It's an indictment on those who are meant to enforce it. You will not replace the Constitution with something better than the Constitution. I promise you, if you replace it, you'll get a strongman or a dictator. That's what will happen. You will get a dictator or you will get foreign invasion. If you think that you're going to buck the Constitution, you're going to change it, you're going to throw the whole thing out, you better be ready for a freaking emperor. And you might think, the edgy memes, yeah, that would be great. I want an emperor. I want a king. Let's just get rid of it. Let's just go all the way. Let's light this candle, brother. Let's have a king. Yeah, that's cute. That's cute. Research your American history. Research what we came from, what we were born out of. The best form of government is always a good, godly king will be the best form of government. The problem is you never keep one. You might get one king that is good and godly. He's a sincere man after God's own heart, and then he screws everything up or he gives it to his idiot son. And his idiot son ruins freaking everything. You never keep a good king. Let me just tell you, it's never happened. The king always dies eventually, and somebody will replace him, and they're not going to be so hot. And then that person kills you and your entire family. Kings, no good. No good. I don't know how we got on an anti-monarchy rant today. But either way, what do we do about it? We pass an amendment, my friend. That is the correct response. That is the correct answer. It is the antidote to a crisis where the Constitution is not clear enough. If the Constitution is not clear enough, we make it clear. We pass an amendment that puts an end to birthright citizenship. That is the prescription should the Supreme Court get this wrong. This is the fourth and final segment of today's show. I realized I made a horrible mistake at the beginning of the program. I did not start off the best. I don't know that this has ever happened. I forgot to start the show the best way that I know how. So we're going to go into the ending of the show on a good note, and we're going to give glory and honor to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, the only one deserving of glory and honor. I have been blessed beyond measure, beyond reason, in a way that I do not deserve and I never will. God is very merciful. He is very gracious to me, and I am eternally thankful for that. My Lord and Savior is Jesus Christ. I am a sinner. I am a wretched sinner. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, but I am washed by the blood of Jesus Christ, and he does not see me as a wretched sinner. He sees me as a son of God, and he will see you that way too should you accept the free gift of salvation. The most important thing that I could ever tell you is to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Get plugged into a church. Get in the Word. I need to spend more time. This is a conviction of mine as well. I need to spend more time reading my Bible. So it's the blind leading the blind on that one. You're probably not reading the Word enough. I'm probably not reading the Word enough. Anyways, let's jump into it. Going into this fourth and final segment, I was thinking about all of the issues, because that's kind of it's been the theme of today's show, is the issues, everything that's wrong, everything that is wrong with birthright citizenship. There's one more piece of this puzzle that I didn't address earlier, and I want to in this final segment. And that is The fact that when you enable birthright citizenship, you devalue what it means to be an American. Let's go back to the starting analogy that I brought forward at the beginning of the show. If somebody breaks into your home, it's a pregnant woman. She squats down in your living room and she delivers a baby right there on the floor. Is that baby now a member of your family? The obvious answer is no. It ought not be that way. Again, we're talking about what ought to be today, a little bit more so than what is. We're not having a legal debate. We're having a debate about what should be. Should that baby be considered a member of your family? Should that baby be written into your will? Should that baby have some sort of an inheritance from you? Obviously not. No, that wouldn't make any sense. That's completely insane. If you were to allow that, yeah, we talked about chain migration. We talked about all of the incentive structure problems. There's another piece of it, and that is that it devalues what it means to be an American. What does it mean to be a member of your family? Maybe you have some pride. Maybe you're one of those families. I always wanted to have, what do they call it, like a coat of arms or something like that? I always wanted to have one of those old Irish shields, and with my name and my family mark or whatever it is. Maybe you're one of those families, or maybe you're just somebody. I remember growing up, my dad used to say, I would go to like a friend's house or something, or I would go maybe to like a school event, And my dad would tell me, have a good time. Remember what your name is. Remember what your last name is. And we all screw up. I'm sure in our own way, we've all dishonored our family name. But there's something special about that. There are a lot of people that came before you that laid it all on the line. I mean, you think mathematically about the percentage chance of you ever being born. Think of all of the people that had to live. Now think of all of the people who died. Think of all of the men who laid down their lives, the women who maybe died in childbirth, delivering an ancestor of yours, the work, the blood, sweat, the tears that went into your family line. We've lost this in the West, by the way, in many ways. We've lost the honor of ancestors, and not like in a weird way. I'm not saying you need to like go worship or pray to your ancestors. Do not do that. Do not do that. But we have lost like a certain level of respect and like, wow, that's really incredible. I want to honor what those guys did. I hope that, generations down the road, my family still remembers my name or something and thinks, that guy was a good guy. I come from the lineage of him. We all have people, maybe not there might be some not so savory people, but think about all of the amazing people that you no doubt have in your bloodline somewhere out there. There should be some pride in what it means to be, in my case, a Nieves. There should be some pride in what it means. Maybe you're a Smith or maybe you're whatever you are. There should be a certain level of familial pride because people laid it all down for you to have the blessing and the opportunity to be on this earth today. You're from a clan, you're from a people, you're from a group. Once upon a time, that meant something. Unfortunately, if you were to just say willy-nilly, that child born in your home, then somebody breaks into your house and it's like, what the heck is going on? They get written into the will and all of this kind of stuff. You're devaluing what it means to be a Smith or what it means to be, in my case again, a Nieves. If somebody is brought into the fold intentionally, we could compare that to like legal immigration or adoption. If somebody is adopted into my family, that means something. That means that the love that I have for that, hypothetical child, for example, is so profound that I'm bringing them in. I am making them a Nieves. I'm making them a member of my family the correct way. Whereas a burglar or somebody who breaks into my house, what do you mean? I'm supposed to treat them as a Nieves? This is devaluing what it means to be an American. It ought to be that as an American, again, speaking today in terms of what ought, more so than what is, it ought to be as an American that there's something special about that. Something special that maybe you didn't earn it, maybe you didn't deserve it, but your bloodline did. Somebody did. Maybe you're one of those, I'm not some hater on immigrants. Maybe you're one of those, immigrants from China or something like that, or from North Korea. And you braved the most horrific conditions, hardships you couldn't imagine, and you finally made it to the United States with a penny in your pocket and nothing else except some work ethic, and you busted your freaking butt. You did it the right way. You did everything that you were supposed to be. Brother, you earned the title of an American. And there's something special about that. That's got a little bit of weight to it. And it should be that you as an American, or maybe your ancestor did it, now you've inherited something from them, the title of an American. It ought to be when you go places, when you do things, you're an American citizen. All the way back in ancient Rome, When you were a citizen of Rome, that carried some weight. That carried some weight. Now, in some places, it might get you killed, but that carried a certain amount of weight to be a Roman citizen because they had a certain degree of reverence for what that meant. And if we're to just get rid of it all, what is an American? Anybody that just got plopped out on this soil? It's more than that. You know, one of the biggest problems I see with our culture right now is many people, if I asked you, in fact, to those who are watching on YouTube, if you stuck around this long, I want you to put in the comments, what does it mean to be an American? For those who are listening on radio, I'll make a point of checking in the app. What does it mean to be an American? How do you even define that? Is it truly just a piece of paper? I mean, no doubt that has to kind of be a piece of it, right? I mean, you're a citizen, okay. But is it just a piece of paper? Is it just a social security number? Is there anything special about our heritage, about our culture, about our people, about our history, about your ancestry, about the people who forged this nation with their bare freaking hands? The Protestant work ethic that came here and busted out of the wilderness and made the greatest nation in the history of the world? Is there not something kind of cool about that? Is there not even almost like some sort of a metaphysical property about what it means to be an American? It's very unfortunate, but many people couldn't tell you. Many people can't explain at all what it means to be an American. In fact, it's actually very difficult to explain even for myself. I think arguably the best way to explain it, unfortunately, is with images, not so much with words, but with images. We know it when we see it, kind of a thing. We know what American is, and I'll tell you what American is not. I know that I don't really like negative definitions. I think that they're quite bad, but we can kind of work backwards a little bit. We can say what is something we know not to be an American. I don't think you're an American if you come here like in the more meaningful sense, rather than just a social security number or a piece of paper. I mean, like really in a deeper sense, what is an American? It's not the person. Let's make up a hypothetical person. Oh, no one in particular. It's not somebody who comes here from Somalia and is given legal status because she married her brother, is a member of a religion and a culture that is completely incompatible with ours, has no desire to assimilate to our culture, and uses her position of power, let's say she's a congresswoman, uses her position of power most often to benefit Somalia, the nation that she came from. I would not consider that person to be an American. I know that's crazy, right? Even if they have the paperwork, albeit maybe ill-gotten paperwork. If somebody comes here from a foreign nation with only the intention to loot, to plunder, to pillage our country and send our resources back to their family in Somalia, that's not an American. You're not. If you come here and you fly foreign flags and you chant death to America, or if you come here and you chant about how you want to change the Constitution in ways of like removing the Second Amendment protections, the First Amendment protections, or you come to America just to jockey a position of power so that we get involved in foreign wars and American blood is spilled so that your native people's blood doesn't have to be spilled, you're not an American. You're some sort of a saboteur. Just like I suppose you could join the American military or something and be nothing but a spy, like a double agent for Russia or something like that. Are you really like an American soldier? Like if your whole purpose in joining the Marine Corps or something was just to relay classified information to a foreign adversary, does that make you you might be like technically on paper, you were a member of the United States Marine Corps. But like, were you really? I'll leave that up to the Marines to decide. They can handle you. I think that their answer would probably be no. There has to be something deeper, and when we give away citizenship like it's nothing, it turns it into nothing. It means that it doesn't mean anything at all to be an American, and that would be a very terrible fate. Anyways, that's everything that's wrong with it. Birthright citizenship, no good, gotta go. Till next time, keep me in your prayers. Keep your country in your prayers. God bless.